one of the reasons why these young couples contacted charity is because they've been threatened to have their child abducted from them, taken away from them. And there's usually no valid reason for them doing that. They don't need a reason. They just need an excuse. There's always plenty of them about for the right children. And in their case, most of the time, I've got to say 99.9% of the time, it's because the children have blonde-haired and blue-eyed. So you can make your own minds up about why that should be, but we asked people on Facebook when we first started up for decent, respectable pictures of children to illustrate the charity. And we were overwhelmed by pictures. We finished up with 160 some pictures. Every single one of them was fair-skinned, light hair, and light-coloured eyes. Every single one out of 160. So it becomes obvious that those are the favourite type of children, babies, I should say, that they actually want, or they're actually targeting. Now, they will do everything and anything possible to get their hands on these babies because the value of these babies is far more than any legal aid can cover. They can go on for decades. They will pursue families to the ends of the earth, literally to the ends of the earth, to get their hands on those kind of children. Not necessarily with any reason to do that, other than financial. Now, I can imagine some people will think, oh, shock horror, Jerry, these things cannot happen. Surely my beautiful country would never do that to his own children. Well, your Prime Minister did it, and the Prime Minister's wife did it. They had shares in adoption agencies. Several, apparently. So, who's going to argue with a trade, a baby trade, when the Prime Minister buys shares in it? How many animals would do that? I'm trying to think. Anyway, that's what they do. And so we move on to the next stage, because that's when it gets a little bit bizarre. We'll say there's 0 to, from birth to about 5 years old. They are a prime age to be adopted and sent abroad. When you get to about 5, 6 and so on, up to about 10, 12 years old, they need children that will be primed for the grooming gangs. I have to explain that one. When I was first involved in this kind of work, I could not understand why anyone would want to take a child away from this loving, caring couple. But when you realise, there was a lot of talk going around, there was an idea that some women or some young women were so poor and depraved that they were buying a passport to benefits by having a baby. And that's a very cruel way of putting it. But it is one way of putting it. It's not the only way of putting it, but it is one way. Now, in amongst all those people, this is how the social services are socially conditioning young people to have as many various partners as they want, without any consequences, so that they can have unwanted children to be sold by social services. Obviously, once again, for adoption agencies. Once the children reached school age, this is when the social services come into their own. This is when the children's charities shone, when the domestic violence organisations and the women's organisations, this is when They actually swarmed in like killer bees to persecute these young children. And let me show you how subtly and how deviously and evil they do these things. The National Children's Charity and the local social services went round the local schools, in junior and infant schools, and they said to all these beautiful little children, if your daddy touches you, that's sexual abuse, children. And this got children totally confused. Well, so what if he kisses you? Oh yes, that is sexual assault. What if he cuddles you, tickles you? Anything? Again, yes, that is sexual assault, girls. And just to illustrate the point, one young girl held her hand up in total confusion. She said, well, if my little sister and I are arguing, my dad tickles us to calm us down. And everybody's thinking, that's a good idea. No, it isn't. They got the father arrested for sexual abuse. Now, that's how they will talk to these 5-year-old children in order to get them to say things that they wouldn't normally even think about saying. They wouldn't even know to say. They wouldn't know what it meant. But that's what they talk about, and that's what they want them to tell those social workers. And it's not that there's anything wrong with toilet training your daughter. There's nothing wrong with tickling them, cuddling them, hugging them. What can you say? What kind of children would they be if you didn't do those things? They'd be peeing on the carpet and headbutting everybody that came near them. Let's try and keep our children well adjusted. Let them see what loving, caring, attentive behaviour is. That way they will recognise it when it isn't. That's the kind of thing that they will actually do. What they're doing is trying to split families apart. Because obviously, if you're going to be accusing the father of domestic abuse and violence and sexual assault in his own child, you might as well give him a gun to his head. Because what's that going to do to a man? And of course, the women organisations, they love all this. That's why they're usually involved in these kind of organisations. So, the idea is to pretend to the entire world that men are the evildoers, the sexual assaulters, all the evil, violent, horrible things that happen to children and young men are because of their father. I'm about to shoot that theory down in flames. Ireland is next to the safest country in the world. I can think of one reason at least. Because when I went there to look up some of the places where my ancestors used to live, my family used to come from, the locals there were asking me what I did for a living. When I said, I have a charity protecting children against the kind of things that happen, they went, oh, that wouldn't happen around here. And when I looked around, I thought, yeah, I bet it wouldn't either. Because if you're that kind of person, you certainly wouldn't want to live in one of these villages. So the idea for me is that we should be emulating the safest, happiest, and most contented and well-adjusted people on the planet. They're literally across what they call a soft border. So what can you say? The only difference between Ireland and the United Kingdom is social workers. In Ireland, they don't need them. Getting back to the children. These children are being primed and prepared for the grooming gangs. And the grooming gangs, once they're into the school, they start giving them drugs, so they become sex slaves, so they become criminals, they feed their addiction, so all the different horrible things that happen. And they finish up so terrified and terrorised at school that they are virtual slaves to these bullies. They are laughing at the white kids because they have terrorised them to such an extent they are completely afraid. They'll give them their shoes, they'll give them their pocket money, they'll steal money from their parents to give to them. 95% of all the children who became victims to grooming gangs, and I'm not talking just about the girls, so boys became victims to the same things: crime, addiction. They were all under social services care. 95%. This starts off, the whole system starts off because somebody tells social services, oh, this person's had a young baby girl. Oh, have they really? And they'll be straight round there, looking through any records that they have. And of course, now that we have social media and computers everywhere, we can more or less find anything that anyone's done at any time in their life. The woman told me today that her and her husband had an argument in 2022. God, I'm sorry, but there are worse things than an argument. But then they don't need a reason, or they only need an excuse. So to sum up, if you can't figure out why they want your child, look at the colour of their skin, look at the colour of their hair, and look at the colour of their eyes. They are the number one prize, and we're talking a lot of money here, a great deal of money. The next step to that is to prepare children and prime them for grooming gangs and to be subservient to these people who dominate the school. And they'll go around and they'll say, did your daddy tickle you? Well, see, I'm a professional youth worker. If I heard anybody asking a child something like that, and they said, no, he never tickled me, I thought, oh, you poor sod. So let's get this right. If they have a problem in Ireland, I'm sure many of you will back me up on this, they sort these issues out themselves. And Ireland is not the sort of place where you want to be going round looking for children. I can guarantee you, you won't know who hit you first. So that's the way we should be living. They should be terrified of us, not the other way round. They're going to be terrorising us and their children. Their children will be growing up terrified and conditioned to be obedient and subservient. For God's sake. Can we have our children back, please, and stop splitting our young couples apart? I'd be very grateful for that. But that's what's happening. They're preparing your children, are preparing to take your children away from you. Stay together, stay strong. Keep that love bond forever. At least until you know your children are safe. But let your children see the love and devotion and how it works, how caring and commitment, all these beautiful things in the world. Show them how they operate and what to be looking for. Let yourselves, let them see you, both of you, sharing affection between each other. Don't be ashamed of that one. Thanks for listening, guys. I know it's gone on a long one, but the people are looking for answers. There you go, there's your answers.